The one thing that always reminds me that I'm in a third world country are cabs. There are so many cabs in Liberia. There's more cabs than people. Well, not really, but it sure seems that way. And the other thing that always reminds me that I'm in a third world country is the rate at which our own vehicles break down. And typically we travel in a full-size van that can fully accommodate 8 people or so, plus our luggage, plus any kind of VBS supplies that we have, and it's not a problem. However, on this day, we were waiting for our van and it never showed up. We were an hour late to the VBS and no van to speak of. Well, at this point, the only option we had was to get a cab. And cabs, even in Liberia, are just small little cars, Toyotas, the 4 doors, the trunk, it's just small Toyota Corolla, an old one. And usually they're all falling apart. And there were 7 of us that needed to go to the VBS. And there's no way we could all fit together in one car. We knew right off the bat that we needed to split up into 2 groups. So one group left, and they actually got a cab pretty easily. So that left 4 of us, Tony, Chris, myself, and Chippy, who was our Liberian friend and the person who was looking over us. Oh, and we had 2 large plastic bins that was holding soccer balls for the kids for the VBS. Well, this was going to be a very daunting task for us. And so not only is it daunting because of how many people we have, but we have to go out to the busiest street of Liberia and try to catch a cab. Now, the cabs don't even stop for you sometimes. I've seen people try to get into a cab, and the cab is still moving, and they're jumping in, and there's already 7 people in a cab that only holds 4 people. So we had been out on the busiest street looking for a cab for like 30 minutes. My stress level was starting to go up really high, and the only other thing that I could even think of was to split us up, the 4 of us up, and to get out there. But I really did not feel comfortable in doing this. I really felt we needed to stay together as a team. And so in my mind, I just started praying a little bit to God and just kind of talking to him. It's like, we cannot do this, God. We need your help. And not even 10 seconds after I prayed this prayer, had this talk, somebody pointed across the street, look, there's a cab coming out of the car wash over there. Now this is a complete miracle. The cab was empty. The cab was not a small one. It was actually a bigger one. It was like a station wagon type, and it was a brand new car, so we knew it wasn't going to break down. So we had to cross the busiest street in Liberia to get across the street to that cab, but we did it. It was scary, but we did it. And when we got to the cab, there was a cab driver, and he really didn't want to go as far as we were going, but praise God, somehow Chippy talked him into going. And I was just so appreciative. When we all got into the car, and I was sitting right behind him, and I kind of just leaned forward to him, and I said, thank you. You've just blessed me. You've just blessed 400 kids. And we started going on our way. Well, it wasn't too long before we were in stop-and-go traffic. And I took this opportunity. I heard God speaking to me in that small, still voice, just to share what we're doing. And so I kind of leaned forward. I was sitting right behind him. I leaned forward, and I just said, I just want to thank you for what you're doing. It's a blessing to me, and it is a blessing to those 400 kids. And I'm telling you, when we get to the schoolhouse, you will see big smiles on these kids' faces. And sure enough, we pulled up to the schoolhouse. The car had pulled into the area where all these kids were at, and they just swarmed around us. And they're just out there yelling, they're here, they're here. And they had the big old smiles on their faces. And I leaned over to him and I said, see, I wasn't kidding. You just blessed them. And I thank you so much. Well, he turned around and he had the biggest smile on his face. And I knew at that point, I just knew, it's like, I thought in the back of my mind, I just never know when the gospel is going to be is going to touch somebody, you know, and here God touched a man who, you know, I don't know if he was Muslim or Christian, but he was touched that day, and you know, here we are. You know, God did all this stuff, and all we were doing was looking for a cab.